So is this like what we had planned last time where I need the go ahead that it's streaming?
We are good to go.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I don't have a gavel, but I call this meeting of the North Liberty Planning Commission to order Tuesday, May 5th, 2020. Roll call.
Apke,
Here.
Detlefson, Gebhardt,
Here.
Heisler,
Here.
Keogh,
Here.
Pentecost,
Here.
Staber.
Here.
All right, moving on to agenda item number 3, approval of the agenda. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, agenda item number 4, request of Harvest Investments LLC for a zoning map amendment. Staff presentation.
Yes, thank you. So this is a request for rezoning. There would be 30 single-family residential units in a private recreation building on a single lot. The development would be age restricted and cooperatively owned. It's my understanding that the applicant has several of these communities throughout the state of Iowa, although this would be the first one that's in single-family format. So the planned area development was chosen to allow flexibility in design. So the zoning ordinance doesn't allow multi single family dwellings on one lot. So that's why the PAD zoning classification. The RS4 is because the density is typical of what an RS4 development would be. I'm going to try and share my screen here and kind of go through a couple pages of the site plan. Can you guys see that okay? Okay, good.
Yeah.
So this shows a single entrance on Jones, a circular driveway. The drive would be private. There would be a gated feature here. It shows the 30 units surrounding the development and the recreation building toward the middle. But this just gives you an idea of how the property would be laid out. There would be a fence on a portion of the northern property. And I'm trying to jump to a new screen here, so bear with me 1 second. Well, it's going to lag, so that's my MediaCom internet connection. So I will try and go through a couple others. The site plan is a little tough because it's a large file. But basically, we have landscaping in the front. As I mentioned, there was a gate. And then also in your packet were the design of the buildings, kind of a modern craftsman design. Very nice design. We're still waiting for the design of the recreation building, which, as I understand, that will be forthcoming. So anytime we look at a zoning map amendment, we're looking at a couple of things. We look at consistency with the comprehensive plan, and is the zoning compatible with the area. So I'm going to try and share one more time. Okay, so here's the land use map. In this area of North Liberty, it's residential, so certainly a residential use would be compatible with that. Hopefully I can get down to basically in this area, a lot of property is zoned ID on the west side of Jones. As we change that zoning, and we can have a better idea of what the development pattern would be. And you have a lot of RS4 and some RS6, as well as some other multifamily on the east side. And so I did a quick density analysis of the, and so you have a couple developments on the east side that are about 2.74 units to the acre. And that gets expected when you have single family residential subdivisions because you dedicate right away and in areas for stormwater features. Quail Creek, which is a little bit down here a little bit, is a little higher. It's 3.95 units to the acre. And the development right now proposed as is 30 units on this lot is 3.56 units to the acre. And let me get out of here. So staff's opinion is the density is consistent with the area, right? And you kind of want higher density as you move towards an arterial road, and the density become less dense and primarily single family residential as you kind of push in away from South Jones Boulevard. And so the PAD ordinance requires submission of site plan, and that's why we have so much detail associated with this request. And so staff analyzed the request for consistency with both PAD ordinance and site plan submission. And so quite a bit of detail here. We've been going through this detail probably since February. So February 27, 2020 is when we had the Good Neighbor meeting. It's pretty well attended. I think there were some people there that were interested more in the development, but we did hear from a few residents in the area, and the primary concern in this area is stormwater. And so we've spent quite a bit of time working with the applicant to try and get the development to be consistent with our stormwater ordinance. So we did receive 2 letters of objection. Those are contained in the file. One is from the property owner that owns property to the south and west, Harold Cameron. I can tell you we had 2 site meetings on his property to kind of better learn what his concerns were about stormwater, both subsurface and surface stormwater. There's a verbal agreement between the contract purchaser here and Mr. Cameron to try and work with the drain tiles and the surface water. So I think we're getting there from a plan. So basically, we have a couple of details that we're looking to provide. We want them to achieve consistency with the post-water runoff ordinance before we bring it to council. And there was a couple items missing that we would ask before it go to council. So I did speak with Harold Cameron this morning. It sounded like he didn't think the zoning, or at least the use of the property and the density were an issue. His concerns still remain about stormwater. And let me try and share on the screen one more time. And so we have 3 listed findings, and we have 8 conditions in staff's recommendation for approval. It's really for dedication of right-of-way and easements. We want them to be subject to the design standards of the RS4. That's a standard that we have for residential development in the city. That none of the proposed, no building in the development have basements. The groundwater table, as we learned, is very high here. And we have stormwater features that are really very close to these units. So we feel that would be a pretty big problem. And then the additional detail on the location, style, height of the entrance gate, and a rendering depicting the landscaping, which is required by code, elevation, of the clubhouse, and the applicant demonstrate consistency with the post-water runoff control, and the applicant pay for the Jones Boulevard improvement fee. So that is staff's recommendation for approval, and we recommend that you incorporate those conditions if you choose to provide a recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Is there an applicant's presentation?
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Good evening, commission members. My name is Jason Ledden with Snyder and Associates. We are the civil engineer on the project. Address is 2727 Southwest Snyder Boulevard out of Ankeny, Iowa. And Heather Ropp and Ray Bisbee with Ewing Development as the developers are on as well. We don't have an official formal presentation other than the items Ryan had shared, and I will try and share those here as well. As Ryan mentioned, we have spent a couple meetings with Harold to discuss stormwater, which has been been expressed to us as a very big item in North Liberty. And in speaking with Kevin this morning, we do still have a couple items to work through, but I have full confidence that we can work through those to his satisfaction and the city's satisfaction. So to kind of explain this development as to why we went with the PAD, this is a co-op model. So what that means, and I'll let Heather elaborate on that a little bit, is that it is you own a share within the development, and then so all the common spaces, the stormwater, the utilities are all shared maintenance and all that, but you own an actual unit. Heather, did you want to expand on that at all?
Yeah, so the co-op concept is just what Jason said it is. There's 30 of these homes, and when the members buy in, they're buying a divided interest in the entire project. So not only are they owning the square footage in which they live, but they're also owning a piece of the 8.5 acres the property sits on and a share of that common clubhouse as well. So it's an ownership model, zero maintenance inside and outside, and really it's to promote community and have them interact as they age with like-minded individuals around them in a safe environment.
All right, thank you. Public comments, were any submitted?
Yes, as like mentioned, we had, so I sent letters out to property owners within 200 feet, just knowing that we wouldn't have an opportunity for people to come to the meeting. The only letters that I received back were 2 emails. I've incorporated both of those. As I mentioned, Mr. Cameron was one of them, and his objections related to kind of the configuration of the site as it related to stormwater. And then the other was just a very short email. It just said, stormwater is pretty much an issue in this area. So not necessarily zoning related, or is that the zoning is inconsistent with the area, just the stormwater comments.
Okay, thank you. So questions and comments from the commission?
So Ryan, this is for a rezoning and for the site plan? Or is it just for the rezoning?
So this is a zoning map amendment request. And when you ask for a PAD zoning map amendment, what it does is it says, we have approval standards for the PAD itself, but then it also reverts you back and says you also need to meet all of the conditions of the site plan. So the site plan is essentially wrapped up in the zoning map amendment.
Okay.
And so, when you're approving the PAD, you're also approving the site plan. So if there's dramatic changes to the site plan for whatever reason that are not, as staff would determine as minor, then we would say, well, you've got to go back through this whole process and essentially get a zoning map amendment again.
All right, just curious. My first question kind of jumps into the whole issue with the landowner, the Camerons. So you said they have a verbal agreement to do X, Y, and Z. What if the developer does not own up to those agreements that they have? Like, does that come back on the city in any way? Especially when it comes to the stormwater runoff stuff.
Yeah, so let me kind of explain a little bit the need for, I think, the agreement. And let me be clear, this is an agreement between 2 landowners that doesn't involve the city.
Okay.
And so essentially what happens, there's a portion of the agricultural land to the west, and a portion of that area drains onto the subject property. And by Iowa state law, that developer has to accept that stormwater, meet all of our codes, and then release it. And what the release point is back onto the Cameron property at the south portion of the property. So early on, Mr. Cameron expressed concerns with the design of the site, namely wet ponds on the western portion of the property because they were adjacent to the agricultural land. But the developer said, and there's a lot of subsurface drainage tile in the area, quite a bit. And so he was concerned about damaging that, which obviously would be a concern for drainage. Basically, the verbal agreement between these two properties dealt with a swale being graded on a portion of the subject property and the Cameron property to basically divert it from the development and then swing it around to where it's normally released on the Cameron property. And so that has allowed some design changes of what you're currently seeing in the site plan. Dry pond now is over on the western portion of the property, and the wet pond is moved over. And there's been some agreements about if drain tiles are damaged and things like that, and what the developer is responsible for. So the bottom line is, if you go through this process and the developer submitted the site plan, and somehow this private agreement falls through, then the design can't be consistent with what you approved. And so, yeah, depending on how severe that change is, then it would have to come back to you for.
Okay.
So does the adjacent property owner do the inspection that the conditions were met, like no tile was damaged and that the grading was done the way that they wanted it, and then just report that back to the city if there's a concern? What is that process?
I could probably jump in here. We asked the developer to include in their construction drawings that their contractor is required to contact the city inspector, and the city inspector will observe all of the tile line exploration just to make sure that all those tile lines were reconnected. Now, whether Mr. Cameron wants to do that himself, I mean, he's got that option too, and he probably will. He'll probably be out there watching it as well. But we did want some oversight of the city because underground field tiles are problematic for new developments. So that's what we do with all the other subdivisions. And this isn't all that uncommon. Usually with new subdivisions, oftentimes we have offsite agreements between the developer and the adjacent property owner. Because oftentimes they have to do some grading work outside of their limits.
And
Okay.
what about, there was a comment about traffic onto Jones Boulevard. Just talk a little bit more about if we have any concerns with stormwater on Jones Boulevard or additional traffic there. I think it was the second letter made some comments about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let Kevin speak to the stormwater. With respect to traffic, South Jones Boulevard is a minor arterial road. And so we're talking about 30 residential units, and Jones Boulevard is not at or near what its design capacity would be. And so we appreciate the comment, but we don't feel that this development would impact traffic on this section of Jones.
Right, and regarding stormwater, yeah, they're not quite done with their stormwater design, but they're getting close. That's their latest report's 186-page stormwater report, and they're getting very close. They just have a few more items to correct or revise, and then it'll probably be ready for approval. The stormwater will be an improvement to the area because it will provide detention for this area. And there will be some additional storm sewer work in Jones Boulevard. They'll be replacing one pipe under Jones Boulevard. But yeah, they're going to meet, they'll have to meet all of our rules and regulations for our post-construction runoff ordinance.
Thank you.
I have two questions about the site plan. Do we have another neighborhood or that has a gate?
There's the one out by the high school, right? Doesn't that have a,
Mhm.
doesn't that have a gate, or will have a gate at some point?
It was included in their plan. I don't know if it's
Okay.
been installed or not.
Okay, yeah, that just looked unusual to me. And then the other thing I wrote down was there are not going to be any streetlights on the street. Is that unusual? The nearby neighborhoods all seem to have streetlights. Is that a
Yeah, keep in mind that this is a private street, and so there's not a right-of-way dedication. So when we have public streets, we will put streetlights in there because we have the public entering those areas.
okay?
This is a little bit more dense, and the houses are pushed up to the street a little bit more, and you won't have the public really entering this property because it'll have that gate, and so there's no maintenance responsibility for the city or anything like that. So it's almost like you would think of it how an apartment would be designed, right? It just has your apartment, your internal drives, and your parking areas, and that's essentially what this is.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments?
I got one other thing. I've spoken with one of the adjacent landowner, like literally adjacent landowners to this project, and this is 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think. But their kind of questions or concern was the density, and I know you know in the presentation and then in the packet you spoke about the densities of the Quail Ridge, Quail Creek stuff there on the east side of Jones, and to me it kind of looks like it. You know, it's not perfectly in line, but it does kind of fall in the middle of those two types that you showed. Now those homes to the north, we know those properties, if somebody tried to propose those now, they probably wouldn't fly. They wouldn't be dense enough. But they are RS4. If I'm looking at this right, that the lot sizes they have now could actually in theory accommodate a couple more houses per lot. Does that look like it's right? And so the density of this project here really isn't too out of line, even with what's available in those lots, should somebody want to, you know, re-subdivide down the road.
Thank you for your comment. I agree.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, you broke up a little there, Ryan.
Sorry, I said thank you for your comment. Yes, I would agree. And hopefully I can try and.
Oh, you're muted now.
Hopefully you can try and
I know it's coming.
Oh, there we go.
There it is. Yeah, so this was kind of the analysis I did of the area. Obviously, Quail Ridge is here, and it's a single family subdivision with right of way dedicated and in an area down here, green space. And so that's going to be a little bit less dense, and that's 2.74 units to the acre. And then Quail Creek down here, a little bit more conventional, a little bit more dense, and that's actually more dense than the proposed development. And so the current development is at 3.56, and so it's in there. And like I said, I would expect higher density development to be pushed closer to an arterial road, and less dense as you would go west into the property.
Okay. So it's kind of like I know this is before your time, Ryan, but the Smigel edition down at Jones and Forever Green a couple years ago, where people on Forever Green didn't, had like the 1+ acre size lots, didn't really like the smaller 0 lots and smaller single family lots coming in. But when it kind of came down to it, is what was there on Forever Green was approved a long time ago, and by today's standards probably would not be approved. And so what we're seeing now is actually more in line with what we would see approved. Okay. So chances are I'll see that person again. I just want to
Mhm.
kind of be able to explain to them if it flies through commission, what some of the reasoning behind it is.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, Ryan, I see a suggested motion here and it refers to 7 listed conditions. Should that be 8 because it's the previous 8 listed?
Yes, thank you for.
Okay. Yeah, and then there was just one super tiny thing at the beginning of this. It says under proposed zoning on the first page, it says section 168.13, and of the North Liberty Code of Ordinance is entitled Pad Zone. I think that should actually be 168.12. I can send it to you if you want. It's referred to as 168.12 later. I don't know. It looks like he's looking through a book. So I'll pause for a second.
You would be correct. So the PAD zone is 168.12. So thank you for catching that.
Yeah, it's just at the very beginning. You refer to it as 1-2 later. But anyways, okay. So if there aren't any more questions or comments, may I have a motion that we can send to City Council? And there is a suggested one in the packet.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval with the 8 listed conditions that are in the packet here.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion to approve with the 8 listed recommendations. I don't know if can I amend? Because there's also a recommendation for the 3 findings. I think I'm a little confused over the difference between the 3 findings in the packet and the 8 conditions.
So you are just forwarding the request to City Council with the recommendation. So what you could do is accept the 3 listed findings and forward the request to City Council with the recommendation for approval subject to the 8 conditions. So I use findings in my staff report to show basically that the request achieves consistency with the comprehensive plan and the Code of Ordinances of Iowa.
Okay, so Kylie's motion to recommend with the 8 listed conditions is on the table. If there's are there any further discussions that need to happen? All right, roll call.
Heisler,
Aye.
Gebhardt,
Aye.
Staber,
Aye.
Bathke,
Aye.
Keo,
Aye.
Pentecost.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Moving on to agenda item number 5, there is a request to the City of North Liberty for an ordinance amending several sections of the Code of Ordinances of North Liberty. Staff presentation.
Okay, thank you. So this is just a minor zoning ordinance, and I will be bringing these to you periodically as I find things that inconsistencies or things that I believe that need to be modernized. I think there's a good deal of modernization that happens and that needs to happen with the zoning ordinance, and I've been around long enough to know that you have a zoning ordinance and then you come up with the design idea and you just kind of tuck them in different places just because you're trying to build on an older zoning ordinance. So Number one, I saw that we had a definition for family. And from a zoning perspective, the state of Iowa does not let us regulate based on family. And so we removed the definition of family and removed the language about family and a dwelling unit. And I also decided to remove definition, or proposed to remove definition for a congregate resident, because that term is not used any other location in the zoning ordinance. And I also noticed we had a definition for sign in the early part of the zoning ordinance, but then we also have a zoning ordinance dedicated, a zoning section designed entirely for signs. And so we have.
Oh, you can mute.
Ryan, you are muted.
Yep, I'm getting there. It's
Okay.
sharing is kind of tough, so I'm just not going to share.
Okay.
If I may. Oh, and I just lost my. There we go. Can you see and hear me? Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
There we go. I touched nothing at that one. So sign codes are problematic. There was a big Supreme Court case in 2015, and you're going to see over the next little bit here that we're gonna propose a number of minor changes to our sign code to make it more consistent with what the Constitution requires. Changing the definition of sign here is one step here in a broader process to make things a little more user-friendly, a little more internally consistent, and then also to sort of pave the way for a broader set of changes that we're anticipating later on. Right now, this is just a nice first step and to get people in line with what we probably have in mind coming up later on. I can go into more detail if you need to, but this is step 1.001 of a bunch.
And Grant, can you just confirm that the changes around family are the required changes? There's no leeway if the Iowa state law requires it. We're just doing that in precisely the way it's required.
Exactly. This is just to conform with. We've already been preempted by state law requirements, and so this is just a way to codify our compliance with that.
As someone who can appreciate all the fine print, meaning the city ordinances, I appreciate Ryan and Grant, you guys taking the time to start cleaning these up and get them more consistent. It's an endless process. I understand that.
20 years and we'll be done.
I didn't see any public comments on this, but just want to make sure no one submitted any. Okay, sounds good. Are there any other additional questions and comments about this agenda item? No? Okay, I'm seeing some no's. So may I have a motion for a recommendation to City Council?
Yeah, I'll move the Planning Commission accept the two listed conditions and forward the zoning ordinance amendments to the City Council with a recommendation for approval.
And I will second.
Great. Motion by Josie, second by Patrick. Any further discussion? Okay. Seeing none, roll call.
Staber,
Aye.
Gebhardt,
Aye.
Keough,
Aye.
Heisler,
Aye.
Pentecost,
Aye.
Bathke.
Aye.
Great. Motion passes. Agenda item number 6, approval of previous minutes. May I have a motion concerning the previous minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Adam, second by Jason. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, agenda item number 7, any old business? Okay, any new business? Gonna go with.
Do we
that's
have
a
any
no.
agenda? Do we have anything in the hopper for next month already?
So nothing on the agenda. I've been talking to a few people, possibly about some minor rezonings and some site plans. We did have a site plan that they were trying to get on this meeting, but there was just so much work that needed to be done. So we possibly might have a site plan next month, but we would need revised plans. So not seeing much, but we are talking to a few people. So I expect it to start picking up a little bit soon.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. If there isn't anything else, may I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And I'll second.
Motion by Patrick, second by Jason. All in favor, say aye.
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 All
Aye.
right, we're adjourned.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.